Hi, I'm Merrison from CellarHand, and today we're heading back to Alsace to visit a farmer who well and truly ploughs his own furrow. And this is what's going to take us there. It is the 2018 Domaine Ostertag Riesling Les Jardins, a wine that'll set you back around $54 here in Australia. But in order to better understand the singularity of André Ostertag, we need to look at the norm for this region, which is nestled between the Vosges Mountains and the Rhine River in France. So this is a really fragmented vineyard. Some 4,000 families growing grapes here. The average holding is around 3.5 hectares or less. Pretty small. And here's the interesting thing. Of those 4,000 odd growers, fewer than a quarter bottle their own wine. Instead, it's the local cooperatives and négociants that account for the vast majority. Now the former, the co-ops, that's where you have growers sharing costs and pooling resources, and the product is then marketed and sold by the collective body. The latter, the négociants, are merchants who buy grapes, must, and or wine and sell it under their own name. Now they might be growers as well. I must emphasize that there's absolutely nothing wrong with either. In fact, Alsace is known for the particularly high quality of its best cooperatives. And as for négociants, much of Alsace's fame and its reputation for quality is owed to names like Hugel and Trimbach. But here's a striking statistic. The largest 20 co-ops and négociants are responsible for a whopping 60% of Alsace production. And that does have quite a big effect on the way that Alsace is marketed and perceived. Generally speaking, Alsace is known for its charming varietal wines and for a handful of big houses and co-ops. If you're buying grapes from other people, it doesn't exactly make sense to place the fruit source front and centre. Terroir, that great French word meaning the specific and inimitable place where the grapes were grown, is not the first thing that pops into your head when I mention Alsace. Now contrast that with Burgundy, another côte-based vineyard to the southwest of Alsace, where terroir is the alpha and omega, and certain growers enjoy a towering reputation entirely disproportionate to their tiny size. The difference in focus could hardly be starker, which is a bit of a pity. The Alsatian vineyard, after all, possesses fascinatingly rich detail. Its position on a fault line has churned up incredible variation of soil types. There's at least 20 major formations in total. It climbs to a higher altitude than Burgundy and produces top quality across a greater range of elevations. And the nooks and crannies you have here, nestled among the Vosges foothills, make for a greater mix of exposures and mesoclimates. So it really is a fascinatingly rich mosaic. And that brings me back to Domaine Ostertag in Epwig. It was founded by Irma and Adolf Ostertag in 1966, but its fame is built on the accomplishments of a die-hard terroiriste, a true believer in the sanctity of nature and place. And I'm talking about their son, André Ostertag, who was just 21 years old when he was handed the keys to the cellar in 1980, and then set about making this one of France's most dynamic and exciting estates. Ostertag makes some of the most lyrical, elegant, and tasteful Rieslings in all of Alsace. This is from Rajat Plar and Jordan Mackay in their book, The Sommelier's Atlas of Taste. They go on, he never imposes a style but lets the vineyard dictate it, meaning that his very dry wines are always rich in diversity. So this is a young estate, and in some ways one that's grown up on the wrong side of the tracks. The Alsace region covers two départements, the Haut-Rhin or Upper Rhine to the south, and Bas-Rhin, or, you guessed it, Lower Rhine to the north. Now generally speaking, the Haut-Rhin is home to the movers and shakers here and associated with higher quality. That's not to say that there isn't widespread recognition of great sites to the north, but the Bas-Rhins are the underdog, historically less well off, with small producers practicing polyculture, so grapes just a part of that, with many a grape crop sold to the big names to the south. But independence of spirit epitomises Ostertag, where André's father started bottling wines from his modest 3 hectares back in the late 60s. 30-odd years later, in 1998, André himself began farming the entire estate biodynamically, in a nutshell treating the vineyard as a self-sustaining organism and eschewing herbicides, insecticides and chemical fertilisers. These days the domain comprises a fraction over 15 hectares, spread over more than 100 small plots of vines. Some 95% of these are in Epwig and the neighbouring villages of Notalten and Itterswiller. André's son Arthur began working in the cellar in 2015 and effectively took the reins in 2018 alongside his father. So the family sees wine as a language that speaks to the senses of sight, smell, taste and touch, one that calls upon the grower's critical faculties as well as memory. Their winemaking is soft, slow and sensual too, preserving the living matter and shaping the wine over a long time. Slow, gentle pressings, natural fermentations and relatively long lees contact are the norm. The Ostertag is split between vin de fruits, wines of fruit that put the variety front and centre, vin de pierre, wines of stone from Lieu-dit and Grand Cru vineyards where the spotlight is on the specific characters of the site, and vin de temps, wines of time such as late harvest and botrytized sweet wines. So this Riesling Les Jardins belongs to the vin de fruits category. It brings together 12 different plots or gardens located around the winery's home in Epwig. The soils are varied. They're sort of clay, sandstone, and sand with volcanic sediments for the most part. Now, these parcels embody the intricate diversity of Alsace. Bits and pieces from Lieu-dit and Grand Cru vineyards bring even more complexity and mineral structure to Les Jardins. And in fact, in 2018, they saw more of that make it into the blend than usual. So all of these plots are farmed or gardened, if you will, biodynamically, and with intimate attention to their own characteristics and needs. To quote André, just like in gardening, the work is strenuous but always driven by a strong sense of aesthetics, harmony and balance that are inseparable from the notion of great wine. For that reason, he continues, we can say we are among the last gardeners of this planet where everywhere intensive agriculture with its army of machines dehumanizes the countryside and exploits rather than cultivates. So these lovingly raised bunches of Riesling grapes were pressed very gently for around 9 hours in an airbag press. The must underwent spontaneous fermentation in stainless steel. And now this also went through complete malolactic conversion. Now that's a common practice for something like Chardonnay, but really rare with Riesling. And it was then aged on its lees for 1 year in the same tanks. It was bottled bone dry with 13% alcohol. And this 2018 is supercharged with floral notes. Jasmine, lemon and peach blossoms, fresh ripe citrus and stone fruits. It's so overwhelmingly pretty, it's actually quite hard to see beyond the fruit, but there's a creaminess and orange yogurt note there as well. In the mouth, there's this impression of soft creaminess too, but then the citrus zestiness really comes through, so it seems to crackle and coat your mouth at the same time. There's a ripe, peachy succulence to it and a touch of tangerine, spice and salinity all emerge on a very long, relaxed finish. It's just an intense and joyously refreshing Riesling, all about that beautiful fruit. And Ostertag's wines have such a sense of composure about them, and what also strikes me is how vividly they call to mind the moment of harvest. This transports you to Alsace, tasting fruit freshly plucked from the vine or tree. And I suppose that's the point. We're invited to roam the family's very own garden. So for more details on the wines of Ostertag, and of course other earthly delights, please go to our website, that's CellarHand.store, or feel free to send us a direct message at CellarHandWine or to me at Van Merrison. But in the meantime, please stay safe, drink responsibly and discerningly, and thank you as always for watching.